The vast emptiness of the Soul Exclusion Zone was a quiet, forgotten place. Most ships in the Galactic Union had no reason to go there. It was a graveyard of space, marked on star charts with dull gray and a simple notation: pre-sentient annihilation event. No residual civilization. No value. Lena guided her scout vessel, the starlit moth, through the silent black. She was a practical woman, her dark hair tied back simply, her hands steady on the controls. 20 years of running survey routes had worn her patience thin for wild theories. Her current passenger was a source of that thin patience. Kai sat in the co-pilot's chair, his nose almost pressed to the data screen. He was a xenoarchaeologist, young enough to still believe the universe held big secrets. The Unions. Initial surveys here were, at best, superficial, he said, not for the first time. A civilization that could achieve spaceflight, even primitive, leaves more than just radioactive dust. There could be artifacts, foundations, anything. Lena sighed softly. The surveys were thorough, Kai. That was 20,000 standard years ago. If there was anything, it's dust now. We're here to scan for magnetosphere echoes, not dig up lost cities. Their mission was simple: run a new, high-resolution sensor sweep along the zone's edge. It was busy work, a box to be checked, so some Union committee could say they'd updated the charts. Lena executed the pre-programmed flight path, her eyes on the instrument panel as streams of confirming data scrolled past. Null readings, null readings. More nothing. Then something flickered. A soft amber alert glowed on her panel. Proximity. Sensors picking up a minor mass shadow, she reported, her professional tone masking a flicker of curiosity. Probably a planetoid the charts missed. It happens. Kai leaned forward. Can we get a visual? Lena nudged the moth into a gentle turn. The main viewport showed only star-speckled darkness. She enhanced the image, filtering out ambient light. A shape began to resolve. It was not the irregular lump of a rock dot. It was a perfect geometric form. That's a cube, Kai whispered. Disbelief flattening his voice. Lena increased magnification. The object filled the screen. It was colossal, each side stretching an impossible 10 kilometers. Its surface was a testament to unspeakable age, pitted and scarred by micrometeorites over millennia. No lights shone on it. No engine ports were visible. It had no markings, no insignia, no apparent weapons. It was just there, drifting in the eternal night like a forgotten die cast by a giant. Run the archives, Lena ordered, her fingers flying across her console. Configuration match. Any culture. Any era. Kai was already doing it. His search algorithms raced through the Union's vast database of ship designs, from the elegant, living ships of the Florians to the crystalline vessels of the Cathar. The system churned. After a long moment, a single word flashed in red. Nitrogen monoxide match found. That's not possible, Kai breathed. The database has everything from pre-FTL sail barges to Union dreadnoughts. Everything. Lena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. She switched to active scans, sending out pings of energy to map the object's composition. The sensors returned chaos. The outer hull was made of an alloy the computer could not categorize. Its atomic structure dense in ways that defied known physics. More disturbing was the low-level energy field that surrounded it, a faint hum in the electromagnetic spectrum. It wasn't a shield. It was more like a veil. Her scans slithered off it, unable to penetrate. It's just sitting there, Lena said, mostly to herself. No power signature. No life signs. No movement. But that field? It's maintaining that field, Kai finished, his eyes wide with academic awe. After 20,000 years? What kind of power source does that? This isn't a relic, Lena. This is a monument. Protocol was clear. They had to report it. Lena opened a tight beam channel to the nearest Union relay station. Her message was crisp, factual. Scout vessel Starlit Moth, Soul Exclusion Zone survey. We have located an unknown artificial object of immense size and non-standard configuration. Material and energy signatures are unregistered. Requesting immediate science fleet dispatch. Coordinates attached. The acknowledgement came back swiftly, tinged with bureaucratic skepticism, but acknowledging the anomaly. A fleet would arrive in 3 standard days. For those 3 days, Lena and Kai kept a cautious distance, circling the silent giant. They named it, for lack of anything better, the monolith. It was a cold, dispassionate name for a cold, dispassionate thing. They tried every standard hail: radio, laser pulse, gravitational wave modulation. They sent the first contact package's mathematical sequences, universal constants, peaceful greetings in 100 Union languages. The monolith consumed their signals without a flicker of response. It was a black hole for communication. Its silence was absolute, deeper than the vacuum around it. It didn't feel hostile. It didn't feel welcoming. It simply was. A profound and unsettling presence that made the vastness of space feel suddenly crowded. Kai spent hours staring at it through the viewport. You can feel it, can't you? He said quietly on the 3rd day. The weight of it, that's not just metal, that's time. Lena, who preferred to feel the weight of her ship's controls, nodded reluctantly. It's waiting. For what? Not for us, Lena said, her eyes tracing the brutal, simple lines of the cube. Or our hails would have mattered. When the Union science fleet finally winked into existence nearby 3 sleek, silver research vessels accompanied by a small defensive frigate, it was a relief. The Moth was no longer alone with the mystery. The lead science ship, the Inquisitive Mind, took over, bathing the monolith in a bath of sophisticated sensor rays that made Lena's equipment look like a child's toy. The results were the same. No penetration, no identification. The head. Scientist, a towel with fronds waving in frustration, declared the object the most significant inert discovery in a century. They established a perimeter. Drones were deployed, skittering across the pitted surface like insects on a tomb. They found no seams, no hatches, no viewports. It was perfectly, impossibly solid. As the teams worked, Lena and Kai watched from the Moth's cockpit. The monolith hung against the starfield, an artifact of staggering, silent arrogance. It paid no mind to the buzzing of the new ships, to their scans, to their theories. It had slept through 20,000 years of galactic history, the rise and fall of empires, the birth of the Union itself. And now it had emerged. Its silence was not the silence of emptiness. They both began to understand. It was the silence of something that had said all it needed to say long ago, and was now simply waiting to see if anyone had been listening. The science fleet formed a loose, glittering ring around the monolith, their lights tiny and frantic against its dark, implacable surface. For days, the best minds of the Galactic Union tried to politely knock on its door. They used lasers, sonic resonators, and focused gravity pulses. The monolith ignored them all. Its strange energy field gently pushed every probe away, like a person in deep sleep brushing off a fly. Inside the main research ship, the mood shifted from excitement to stubborn frustration. The lead scientist, a Tal named Vryn, clicked his beat in annoyance. "It is a vault without a keyhole," he declared. "We must consider more direct methods." Lena and Kai watched from the observation deck of their smaller scout ship. Kai was tense, leaning forward. "They're going to try and cut their way in. It's a mistake. You don't open a message like that with a laser torch." Lena agreed. She had seen the scars on its hull from eons of space dust. A cutting laser would be a pinprick. "They won't listen to us," she said quietly, but someone else did. A Union engineer named Myra had been studying the energy field's rhythm. She was a woman with sharp eyes and grease, often smudged on her cheek from working inside machinery. She believed the field wasn't just a barrier. It was a lock. And every lock has a key. She proposed her plan to Vryn. Instead of fighting the field, they should feed it. A specific frequency of energy, matching the field's own low hum, applied not as a weapon, but as a offering, a completion of a circuit. Vryn, out of options, gave a reluctant approval. Mira's team, which included Lena for her piloting skills and Kai for his observational notes, moved in a small utility pod. They attached a large, dish-like emitter to the pod's hull. The plan was risky. They would fly closer than any ship had gotten, and pour energy directly into the monolith's shell. Lena guided the pod with a gentle touch. The massive face of the cube filled their view, becoming not an object, but a landscape of ancient wounds and shadows. Activating the emitter, Mira said, her voice tight. She flipped the switch. A deep, throbbing tone filled the pod. A visible shimmer, like heat haze, radiated from their dish and washed over the monolith's surface. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then, directly in front of them, a line appeared. It was perfectly straight, etching itself across the dark metal without sound. More lines connected, forming a large square 10 meters to a side. With a silent, smooth motion, the square sank inward and then slid away, disappearing into the wall. Where there had been solid, impenetrable metal, there was now an opening. A doorway into the dark. The inside was not what anyone expected. They had imagined corridors, control rooms, cryochambers. Instead, the light from their pod spilled into a vast, empty space. It was like flying into an endless black cathedral. Their beams could not find a far wall or a ceiling. The air that drifted into their pod was cold, dry, and carried a smell that Kai immediately recognized from ancient planetary dig sites, the smell of stillness, of preserved things. Life support is active, Myra whispered, checking her sensors. The atmosphere is thin but breathable. It's been maintained. They drifted forward, their lights carving tunnels in the profound dark. After what felt like an age, their beams fell upon something. A structure in the center of the emptiness. It was a raised platform, and on it sat a cluster of consoles. They were bulky, physical things made of the same dark metal, covered in buttons, levers, and slots. There were no smooth touchscreens, no holograms. This was technology you could hit with a hammer. A linguist named Jin had joined them. He was a quiet man who saw patterns in everything. As they landed the pod and stepped onto the platform, his eyes were glued to the consoles. The symbols, he muttered, recording everything with a small device. They are not aesthetic. They are instructions. Direct and simple. He pointed to a repeating mark. This one is everywhere. A foundation. A base. Myra, wearing an environment suit, ran her gloved hand over a lever. It was stiff, but it moved. The mechanics are crude, massive, built to last, not to be pretty. She found what looked like a main power interface, a simple slot. She took a universal adapter from her kit and carefully plugged it. In that the console came alive, that it did not light up with a gentle glow. A bank of heavy, glass-covered gauges snapped into view, their needles trembling. A low, visceral vibration rose through the platform into their boots. From the center of the console, a light sparked and shot upward, fanning out into a hologram dot. It was a star map. But it was wrong. Jin gasped. The galactic plane? It's rotated? These are not current star positions. His fingers flew as his device correlated. This is the galaxy as it was, approximately 20,000 years ago. The map was stark utilitarian. Different sectors were marked with simple geometric symbols. And at its heart, in a modest, out-of-the-way spiral arm, a small yellow star pulsed with a soft light. Next to it was the symbol, the Hone star, Kai said, his voice full of awe. That's their sun. Mira was looking at another part of the console where small lights winked on and off in a green row. Next to each light was a word in the same blocky symbols. Jin's translation software, working furiously, began to give approximate meanings. Structural integrity, energy core, gravitational anchor. His eyes went to the final light in the row. It was not green. It was a soft, steady blue. The symbol next to it was more complex. The translator struggled, then offered a tentative phrase. Long dream, preservation, life hold. The breath caught in Kai's throat. It's not a tomb, he whispered. Lena understood first. Her pilot's mind went to system checks and status reports. A blue light wasn't a failure. It was an active, ongoing process. Something's alive in here, she said, the words hanging in the cold. Ancient air. The holographic star map flickered once, brightly, as if the ship had taken a sudden, deep breath after a long sleep. Then it went dark. The consoles powered down. The gauges went dead. The vibrations ceased. The monolith had returned to its silent vigil. But everything had changed. They were no longer standing in a derelict. They were standing in a machine that had been quietly, patiently doing its job for 20,000 years. It wasn't drifting. It was waiting. And now they had found the single, tiny, glowing blue light that told them what for. They had found the sleeper. The discovery of the blue light changed everything. The news shot through the Union science fleet like an electric current. A preserved life form. A survivor from a silent age. The mood shifted from academic curiosity to a tense, urgent focus. Protocols for ancient biologicals were activated, and a sterile medical bay was prepared on the inquisitive mind. Myra's team, now under intense scrutiny from Union Command, worked for 2 days around the clock. Their goal was to access the preservation chamber without triggering any failsafes. The console's symbols, painstakingly decoded by Jin, guided them. The chamber was deep within the monolith, behind a series of massive, mechanical doors that groaned open for the first time in millennia. Lena and Kai were part of the entry team, suited up and moving with slow, deliberate care through the colossal interior spaces. The air grew colder as they descended. They finally reached a vault-like door, marked with a single, large symbol that Jin's translator now firmly called Sanctuary. With a blend of modern tools and careful manipulation of the ancient controls, the door unsealed. It opened not with a hiss, but with a deep, shuddering sigh of equalizing pressure. Fog, cold and white, poured out around their boots. The chamber inside was small and stark. In its center sat a single capsule. It was not sleek or futuristic. It was a solid, functional cylinder of metal and thick glass, covered in a lattice of wires and pipes that looked more like industrial plumbing than medical technology. Inside, visible through a frost-rimmed window, was a shape, a human form. Kai stared, his heart hammering. It looked so ordinary. No scales, no feathers, no chitinous plates. Just pale skin, dark hair, a face that could have belonged to any of a dozen Union species, yet was uniquely, undeniably different. It was smaller and more fragile-looking than he had imagined any star-faring being would be. The head scientist, Vryn, directed the procedure from a remote feed, his voice crackling in their helmets. Extreme caution. The preservation medium is unknown. Begin the revival sequence as per the decoded prompts. Mira, her hands steady inside her thick gloves, worked at a panel on the capsule. She followed the instructions Jin relayed, her touch on the physical switches and dials gentle but firm. A deep hum filled the chamber. The lattice of pipes began to glow with a soft amber light. The frost on the glass started to melt. The fluid inside the capsule began to drain. The figure within trembled. A series of lights on the panel switched from blue to yellow, then to a steady green. There was a final soft click. The capsule's front panel slid open. Cold vapor rolled out. The figure, a woman, they could now see, took a sudden, ragged, gasping breath. Her body convulsed once, a spasm of raw life returning. Her eyes, shut for 20,000 years, flickered open. They did not blink in confusion or squint against the light. They opened, dark and deep, and immediately focused. They moved from the unfamiliar faces of Mira and Kai in their bulky suits, to the cold walls of the chamber, to the open door and the darkness beyond. There was no scream, no panic. There was only a terrifying, absolute calm. An assessment. She tried to speak. A dry, cracking sound came from her throat. She swallowed with visible pain, then tried again. The word was a ghost of sound, shaped by a mouth and tongue that had not moved in epochs. Jin, listening over the audio feed, held his breath. His software analyzed the phonetics, searched its now expanded database of the monolith symbols. It found a probable match. Hanyul, he whispered into the cone. I think she said Hanyul. Mira was the first to move. She slowly, carefully removed her helmet. The chamber air was cold but breathable. Hanyul? She asked, keeping her voice soft and low. The woman's eyes locked onto Mira's face. She gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. Her gaze was ancient, carrying a weight that made Mira, a veteran of deep space salvage, feel like a child. They helped her from the capsule. She was weak, her legs buckling, her body shivering violently. They wrapped her in thermal blankets and supported her as they moved her to the waiting medical pod. Throughout the transfer, her eyes never stopped moving, observing everything the Union ships visible through a viewport. The technology on their belts, the cut of their suits, on the inquisitive mind. In the sterile white medical bay, the real work began. Medical scanners beeped and whirred. Hanyul endured it all with silent patience. She sipped water slowly. She ate a simple nutrient paste. Her strength seemed to return not in bursts, but in a slow, deliberate tide. Jin and Kai were allowed in, with Veer observing on screen. A translation device sat between them and Hanyul, who now sat propped up on a medical bed, her dark hair framing a face that was young, but her eyes that were older than history. Can you understand us? Jin asked, speaking clearly into the translator. It emitted a series of soft, tonal sounds, its best guess at her language. Hanyul listened. She tilted her head. Then she spoke a short sentence. The device struggled, then produced a broken translation on its screen. Sound, pattern. Recognizable. You are. Not my people. We are from the Galactic Union, Kai said, leaning forward. We found your ship. You have been asleep for a very, very long time. The translator conveyed the concept. Hanyul's expression did not change. She asked a question, her voice still rough, but stronger. How long? Kai took a deep breath. Approximately 20,000 of our standard years. For the first time, a reaction. Not shock, but a deep, profound sadness that settled in her eyes like dust. She looked down at her own hands, turning them over as if seeing them for the first time. The long night, she said, the translator picking up the capital letters. It was successful. What was the long night? Jin asked gently. What happened to your people? Hanyul looked up, her ancient eyes moving from Jin to Kai to the image of Veen on the screen. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked her own question, and the chill in her voice made the medical bay feel suddenly cold. Is the galactic core at peace? The words appeared on the screen. Or does the devourer still reign? Silence. The devourer? Vryn's voice came from the speaker, laced with confusion. We have no record of such an entity. The core is home to ancient, peaceful civilizations. A flicker of something like bitter hope crossed Haniel's face. No record? She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Good. That was the point. Then she began to talk. The words came slowly at first, and in a steadier stream, as if a floodgate of memory had been opened. The translator worked furiously, rendering her story in broken, stark phrases. She spoke of a galaxy where humanity was young and loud, reaching for the stars. They found not empty silence, but a hungry one. A force from beyond the galactic rim. A cybernetic swarm. It consumed not resources, but civilizations, their knowledge, their technology, their very biological essence, adding them to its own form. It was the devourer. Humanity fought. They were losing. Their worlds were being erased from history itself. In their final days, they made a choice. They would not be consumed. They would vanish. They launched ships like the monolith arcs of silence in every direction. They erased their own traces, poisoned their own worlds to look dead, and went utterly dark. The long night was a strategy, a hiding place in time. We were the watchers. Haniel said, her gaze distant. Our mission was not to rebuild. It was to wait, to see if the galaxy grew strong enough to fight, or if the devourer left, or... She looked at her hands again, to see if it was finally time for us to rise again. Kai felt the universe reshape itself around him. The pre-sentient annihilation event in the history files wasn't a tragedy. It was a tactical retreat of staggering scale and patience. Humanity hadn't died. They had gone to ground for 20,000 years, holding their breath in the dark, and their ship hadn't emerged by accident. Haniel's final, soft-spoken sentence confirmed it, filling the room with a new and terrifying silence. The ship woke me, she said. It detected a signal. A very old signal. The devourer's hunting call. It is here. The word devourer spread through the fleet, a cold virus of dread. Haniel's story was met with a mixture of awe, skepticism, and fear. The Union Council, light years away, demanded proof. Ancient history was one thing. A current threat was another. Proof arrived from the rim. A fringe agricultural colony, a peaceful world of floating fungal forests, went silent. Not just silent. Its communication satellites stopped talking, but its power grids kept running for another 6 hours, in patterns that made no sense for farming. Then they too went dark. A scout ship sent to investigate reported a strange, metallic haze over the largest continent before its signal dissolved into static. Panic, controlled but real, began to seep into the fleet's orderly routine. The monolith was no longer just an artifact. It was a bunker, and they were gathered outside its door while a storm gathered. Haniel, recovering with a speed that unsettled the medics, was moved to a secure briefing room. With her were Jin, the linguist, whose job was now translation and context, and a new face, Tay. He was a Union historian. An older man with a face like a wrinkled map, specializing in dead cultures and cosmic catastrophes. Tay had brought records. Not digital files, but ancient physical tablets and crystal logs from extinct species. He spread them out before Haniel. The Florians of Lyra, he said, pointing to an image of beautiful, crystalline plant beings. They vanished at their technological peak 12,000 years ago. We found their cities intact, but empty. No bodies. No decay. Just absence. Haniel looked at the image. She pointed a slender finger at a symbol etched faintly on a Florian spire. It was a spiral with a jagged cut through it. The devourer's mark, she said, the translator flatly relaying the awful words. It takes the pattern, then cleans the slate. Tay's hands trembled as he pulled up another record. The Cathar, a silicon-based hive mind, 8,000 years ago. One day their collective song stopped. We found their asteroid hives melted from the inside out into smooth, useless slag. He showed her a spectral analysis. Embedded in the slag was a residual energy signature. Jin compared it to a scan from the monolith's memory. They matched. A cold, non-biological energy pattern, like a fingerprint. Piece by piece, the graveyard of the galaxy gained a caretaker. 6 major civilizations, each one a firstborn in their region, had not simply faded away. They had been harvested precisely during the era humanity had been silent. The Union's peaceful history, it seemed, had only been possible because something had been culling the giants before they could become threats. Or neighbors. You didn't just hide, Tay said to Haniel, his voice full of horrified respect. You drew a map of the slaughter. Haniel nodded. To fight a hunter, you must first understand its path. Her priority now was the monolith's central memory. Not the basic consoles, but the deep core storage Jin believed was buried in the ship's heart. With Myra's engineering skill and Haniel's guidance, a series of gestures, and that single, potent symbol, they accessed a chamber unlike any other. It was not empty. It was filled with a low blue light and the soft hum of perfect preservation. Stacked in endless rows were not data crystals, but solid cubes of a dark glass-like material. Billions of them. The pattern arc, Haniel said, touching the surface of one cube. It lit up at her touch, showing forests, cities, oceans, faces. Not seeds for a new world. The memory of the old one. Every story, every face, every song. Her voice was thick. This is what we saved. Not ourselves. Our proof that we were here. But there was another section. These cubes were marked with a different symbol. A barred circle. The war memorial. They activated one. The room was filled with a holographic battle, so intense and chaotic it made them stagger. Ships that looked like crude cousins of the monolith fired solid projectiles and blinding pulses of raw electricity at a swirling, silver swarm that moved like liquid metal. The swarm absorbed energy beams. It hacked into ship networks, turning them against each other. But the kinetic projectiles, simple slugs of metal moving at terrible speed, did damage. The electromagnetic pulses made the swarm flinch and scatter for precious seconds. You fought with primitive weapons, Mira observed, her engineer's mind analyzing the tactics over the horror. We fought with what worked, Haniel replied. The devourer adapts to energy. It absorbs complexity. It is confusion made manifest. So we used simple things. Hard things. Things that do not think and cannot be confused. Kinetic force. Magnetic disruption. Closed systems. She pulled up a final data set. It was not a weapon schematic. It was a frequency. A complex shifting signal that was the unique identifier of the devourer's hive mind, its constant, whispering song of consumption. And next to it, a counter-frequency. A screaming, discordant burst of noise that was humanity's final, desperate weapon, a memory. This is the song of our last stand, Haniel whispered. The memory of total, scorched earth defiance. Of a prey that chose to burn its own world rather than be eaten. The devourer remembers this. It is the only fight where it gained nothing. The only pattern it could not consume. Back on the Union command ship, the situation grew dire. Scattered reports from the rim confirmed the devourer's advance. It was methodical, consuming outposts, adapting to Union energy weapons within minutes. A Union cruiser, the Light of Kirill, engaged the swarm. Its plasma cannons were ineffective. Its shields were algorithmically dismantled. The cruiser was not destroyed. It was subsumed, turning into a jagged piece of the swarm itself before going silent. The Union admiral, a stern man named Day, faced a terrible truth. His fleet, the pride of a peaceful galaxy, was useless. More than useless, it was a fuel source for the enemy. He called for HNEUL in the strategic planning room. Surrounded by glowing star maps showing the Devourer's encroaching blight, Haniel stood small and quiet. She listened to the reports of the light of Kirill. "Your advanced technology is a feast for it," she said finally, her words translated for the grim-faced officers. "It eats complexity. You are giving it a banquet." Admiral Day's face was stone. "You propose we fight with rocks and sticks?" "I propose you fight with a shield and a spear," Haniel said. "The monolith is the shield. Its memory is the spear," she explained. The monolith's fabrication units could produce the simple, brutal weapons of humanity's old war. Railguns that fired solid metal, missiles with chemical explosives, ships with shielded, non-networked computers. "You want to downgrade?" Mira asked, incredulous but fascinated. "I want you to survive," Haniel said, looking at the Admiral. "Let the Devourer focus on your shiny, tempting fleet. It will see them as the threat. And while it does, we hit it with the things it has forgotten how to fear. We remind it of the prey that fought back with nothing but rage and noise." She pointed to the counter-frequency on her data slate, the scream of a dead civilization's defiance. "And then we give it a headache it has had for 20,000 years. The plan was insane. It was a step backward into barbarism." But as another casualty report flashed on the Admiral's screen, a whole colony sector going dark, he had no other options. The Galactic Union, pinnacle of civilization, would go to war using the crude, forgotten tools of the Silent Ones. The order was given. The monolith's ancient forges, dormant for millennia, flared to life.